All right. I am so happy to welcome back to the program. We have Sol Jonassen with us here again. Thanks for joining me, Sol.
Oh, it's a pleasure, especially now with all these intense and interesting astrological cycles that we are both moving out of and moving into. So it's quite a time we live in.
It is. And when I think about the last time Sol was on the program, it was actually, we were talking about prepping for Saturn Pluto. That was our topic. And here we are, like, I know.
Yeah, the preppers, you know.
Oh,
yeah.
It's well, kind of
here
funny.
We are.
Yeah.
That turned out to be, I was sort of thinking, oh dear Lord, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto. It's a aspect associated with the world wars. So I was prepping for World War III. I didn't know I needed so many, that was the thing we had to stock up on. Masks, yeah. Prep for World War III, masks. So yeah, it's been intense, and I can really feel that humanity is we're working on our psyche here now really hard. We need some hope, we need some spring, we need some sunlight, we need just something that's not COVID.
Yeah. Amen to that. And I mean, that's what we're here to talk about today, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, associated with that, but the episode is on Jupiter moving into Pisces, which a lot of people want to, associate with the idea of the coming of spring of sorts, with, coming out of these times and looking for that hope that comes with Jupiter and with Pisces too. But part of us are like, do we just have these rose-colored glasses that are thinking this is going to fit every problem that we have, Jupiter moving to Pisces? But I'm excited to pick Sol's brain about it and talk about it more. But before we get started, just in case you're not familiar with who she is or her work, Sol, share a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, I'm a full-blown astrology geek who was given my first lectures by my Jupiterian father, who's in Aries. And it just lit a fire in me that never extinguishes. I always return to astrology and astronomy, and watching the sky is just like coming home to me. I was reminded yesterday of my incredible love for astrology by going out and watching the triple conjunction of Venus, laying there close to the horizon, and then Saturn a little bit further up, and then Jupiter hovering high above. And I was just stunned of the beauty. And it sort of opened up an understanding that we live in this cosmological family neighborhood. It's our parents in the sky. It's our, it's been informing us since forever. So I keep reconnecting with it, and it never dies, this flame. So so I live in Bergen, Norway, which is on the west coast of Norway, and I keep an astrological practice where I meet people both through Skype and through my lecture work and through my educational work. And not just in Norway, but all over the world. So I've been extremely blessed to have that opportunity to work with lots of different cultures and meet different people from all around the world, including you, Melissa.
Yes. That's not Jupiter. I don't know what is.
Oh, I'm born with Sun-Jupiter conjunction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I take up a lot of space.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I have the Mercury Jupiter conjunction, so my words take up a lot of space. I do.
Yeah, talk a lot.
That is absolutely the truth. That's funny.
Join the club.
Oh, but I feel you on looking at that alignment in the sky. It just happens to keep lining up at this time of year where I can see it almost every night out of my bedroom window.
Oh, dear Lord,
when the sun sets and they're just, well, Venus is getting closer and closer now. So it wasn't so much the case maybe yesterday, but about a week or two ago, there was a nice solid period where, once the sun set, if I just went to my bedroom, south facing window, I would see the three of them all aligned. And it is really magnificent to view, especially when the moon was moving over that point too, and kind of leading the charge. And I tried to take the best pictures I could, but it's more of an experiential, like, oh, look at the magnitude of those, planets. And obviously us being planetary geeks as we are, we attribute much more to seeing that alignment than maybe someone being like, oh, how cool, the planets are in the sky. Like, we understand more so what that, I don't know, maybe not even, I'm not even thinking about it. It's like an intuitive feeling that comes in where I'm like, oh, I feel the power of this lineup, and especially at this moment in time. So I resonate with that. But
yeah, I had a real close encounter with the consciousness of the planets when I was looking at it, because we struggle a little bit with cloudy weather here in Bergen. It's a very rainy city. So I've only seen Venus retrograde, Venus on the night sky, I think 3 or 4 times. And every time I'm like, oh, and then I started crying a little bit. Oh, she's there, Venus,
He's so beautiful.
But the day before yesterday, we went to the mountain and we saw it from above, like you could just look straight into it. And it reminded me, it sort of made everything real, the connection we have with cosmos, the consciousness, the dimension of consciousness. That's what it is for me. It's like informing us all the time, Jupiter with its wisdom and its teacher, and Saturn with its organization and its structure, and it's like an informant, informing us about, okay, do this, do that, don't do that, do this, that's a good thing to do, like almost like parents. Yeah. So if you just look to the sky, I don't know whether or not we just mirror or project our consciousness into it. It's hard to tell, but it's a co-creative thing, I think. Me meeting cosmos, cosmos meeting me in a way. So that was amazing to watch. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So look up now, because this, we're down to like just a few days before that whole viewing party will break up a little bit.
Over. Yeah.
So get in there.
And I think Jupiter is going into Pisces actually tomorrow.
And it's so we are recording this. When are we recording this? December 28th on Tuesday. And what's funny, Sol, is when I just looked at the chart right before I got on the call with you, Jupiter was at 0 degrees of Pisces on the ascendant, or Jupiter's not at 0 degrees. The ascendant of where I am is at 0 degrees, and Jupiter is right conjunct it. And the moon is actually on its way to trine as well. So I'll share my screen here if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, so we're talking about Jupiter in the last throes of Jupiter being in Aquarius, with the moon trining in. And yeah, I thought it was interesting. It just happened to work out because we were supposed to record a few days earlier, and then, things got in the way, which are totally fine. And this is the right moment. It seemed like kind of a perfect alignment.
Seemed like a good moment. Even though this 29th degree is like wrapping up something, it's feeling extremely like, okay, we're wrapping up something. Jupiter is not coming back to Aquarius in another 12 years. So it's finishing off that year that it spent in Aquarius, and it's been quite a year.
Do you, before we go on to the Jupiter and Pisces, do you have any thoughts on the Aquarius transit, or anything you just noticed or comes to mind?
Well, yeah, Aquarius is, in many ways, the mindsets of the collective, right? It's we are moving through some extremely intense times where we are reminded that we are all in this together. So I think there's, in particular, the Aquarius vibe to it. It has a lot. Saturn is there too, of course, and that's the surveillance, the society, what's the beliefs, what we believe in, what we don't believe in, the group work, our group consciousness. We found our peers, but we also saw during this year that it's been the ruler of the South Node, right?
True.
So we also saw during this year that a lot of groups opposed each other. Like this group believes in this and that group over here believes in that. So this group consciousness is not working in a synthesis. It's working more, they want to kill each other in a way. I want to kill you with my knowledge. Well, I'm going to slash you back with mine, And I think a lot of, there's been a high degree of higher knowledge as well coming in with science and understanding of illness and disease and the body and what to do. And it's, like that kind of intel coming to us. So I think a lot of people have learned a lot, right? And I think we are really learning. It's like, oh, dude, I didn't know that, and now you know. So it's been an enlightening time, even though it doesn't seem like that at first glance. We are more embedded in this fear of Armageddon that keeps rising in our consciousness all the time. But what I think has been I had COVID, by the way. And what I found was, I call it flu with the psychosis on top. Because there's such a level of consciousness. I had to deal with a lot of collective consciousness with it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like, oh, dear Lord, everything that's written about it, every story you read, there's like an anxiety level to it.
Yeah.
It's so strange. It's like, because I had the flu before and that was hard. Flu is hard on your body, you can get really, really sick. So, but this, I'm never worried about it before,
Yeah.
I was never up like, oh, I'm going to die, but this time I'm like, oh, dear Lord, I registered everything I read about COVID in my mind. And now it's all coming up. It's rising in my consciousness. And I have to deal with my mother going crazy and this kind of thing, and I'm like, that's not making it easier,
Yeah.
So there's like a high level of very intense neurological energy that comes in with Aquarius. Aquarius it runs in medicinal astrology, it's the nervous system. Yes, the COVID aims at the nervous system. There's a consciousness attached to it in a way. I might sound completely ludicrous when I say this.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, whether you have it or not, we all have it. You see, that's it. Because now we're in this together in this global village, and we all have it, even if we don't get it physically. Right? It's not visiting our bodies, right?
It's a disease of humanity.
Yeah, because I just say humanity's got the flu.
Yeah.
We are all sneezing at the same time in a way. Maybe it's doing something to the orb. It's wobbling us out of orb.
Oh man, that makes so much sense to me. I mean, I have luckily not received the gift of COVID, but I think you're absolutely right about that, because when has there been, I mean, maybe in the past with certain diseases that mankind has had to get through that were perilous in their own journey, but you're right about the consciousness that's attached to it too, because it's not just getting sick. It's everything. Yeah. Like everything that you've read, everything your friends have said, and not even that, it's just the overall anxiety and energy of just being connected to everything that you could feel, even if you weren't trying to mentally process that in a conscious space. It's an unconscious energy as well, because it is literally on almost everyone's mind to some extent. And it just permeates. So I get that.
And now we're so connected. We see now, I wrote an article in 2019 actually about Saturn in Aquarius transit. And what really, stood out for me was that I used as one of the structures of that article, which is a pretty long article, and the internet and, the first Saturn return of the internet, in the way that, sort of, I mean, it's older, but we've been living with the internet basically a Saturn cycle already, where it's pretty much mainstream or everybody had access to it. And the last couple of years, this energy is just spun so quickly. We are like online everywhere. We are just feeding our brains information all the time. And there's healthy aspects to it, but there's also extremely unhealthy aspects to that. So be careful what you read, be careful what you take in. It matters. It really, really matters. And this how can you say, almost this scrolling where you're semi-awake. You're scrolling to your phone, you're picking up your phone first thing in the morning, information in your brain. So that's been on my mind.
No, I feel you. It's like almost like dead scrolling where you're like, you're half there, you're half not. What are you taking in? It's dissipating your ability to even have an attention span anymore, because our attention spans are just like dissipating at a rapid speed where, just don't have time. It's almost, it has a paradoxical energy to it, because it's like we're taking in all this information, yet at the same time, so much is coming at us that we have somehow gotten further away from even processing information to fully understand it.
We don't take time to process. We just read the headlines, for instance. No, I made up my opinion. South Node in Sagittarius, I have opinions, you see, right?
Oh, yeah.
Never mind checking the backstory, we don't have time. There's this intense, this kind of haste inside humanity for the time being. And I think we're all a little exhausted by it. That's what I think, and I think we can become extremely reactive by not getting a conscious relationship to what we serve our eyes in the morning or in the evening, or how much, I've been so hard with my parents. It's like, don't watch the news 4 times a day. You're going to stress yourself out. You're not going to be able to solve the world problems by watching it 4 times and just repeating and repeating and repeating. So I think one thing that the media has done wrong is that it's been, unfortunately, using its power in a way that I think we will discuss in the future. How do we encourage people to become strong? Is that what we want? It's a very valid question, I think. Do we want them to be weak? Do we want them to be scared? And I'm not saying you shouldn't be scared of COVID. It's a disease. It's hard for your body. You don't want it, right? Yeah. It's not something you want. It's like, okay, 3 weeks later, you're like, but still, this added psychosis on top doesn't help, It's like, so there. So I've been interested when Jupiter goes into Pisces, because, it's already been there once. It was in May, 12th of May, I think it ingressed. And it coincided with the drop of the BTC, the Bitcoin. It just, boom, immediately Jupiter entered Pisces, boom, the Bitcoin was devaluated. Not so much, but it caused a real shake in the crypto market. So that was the thing I remembered the most, but I was curious about mutation. Because it's the mutable signs. I'm hoping, that something will change when the nodes shifts away from the mutable signs. We will still have to live with Neptune in Pisces for quite a few years. And this year also, and thankfully for not such a long time, Jupiter will jog through Pisces. Let's just say it's like he's jogging through.
I know, it's just cruising.
Yeah, cruising. In May, he's already out. Ciao, jumping on the scooter and going through Aries instead. But I've been curious about the mutations with this one, now we have this new variety, and traveling is still, now we're probably looking at a new set of travel restrictions globally. At least it's going to be more difficult to move around freely. And so I'm a bit curious, because most viruses, there's like I'm so strange that I studied the bubonic plague. This is something that I had to know, the astrology of the bubonic plague.
Not strange to me. I'm all, that sounds like a delightful research.
Morbid much? Slightly. But the thing, it lasted about 4 years. So it's like a world war, basically 4 years, 5 years. And I'm thinking, okay, what happens with the virus in that time? Well, the faster it spreads, the less, potent it becomes.
Yeah, because there's.
So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will mutate into a milder form. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people thinking right now that the new version is, yes, more contagious, but not as devastating to the system. Like maybe, it is much easier to get, but maybe the effects will lessen a little bit. I mean, you still be sick as a dog probably, but not in the sense where you're going to see as many people in the hospital or, because I don't know, it feels like, that's the nice thing about mutable signs too, is it has the mutation of it, but it also, because of the mutation, it has that transitionary energy that helps to deconcentrate it, as the fixed signs concentrate something so much, and the mutable will keep it there, but it will be a shift that comes with that.
Yeah, so I'm sensing you are looking really much forward to this Jupiter in Pisces thing. You're like, yay, Jupiter in Pisces.
I'll take it. I mean, for me, that's my 5th house, so I'll take it just in general, because I'm like,
dear Lord,
you got to give me something, right? Come on, Jupiter, like, just come on.
Just a little bit of world fame. Come on, man.
Just a little, just a taste. Come on.
I hope so too for you. Yes.
Yeah, but just having Jupiter out from under Saturn's domain, basically. Depending on if you're looking at traditional rulerships, it does feel a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah,
lighter. It's like here.
Yeah. And maybe it's not even that everything is like just immediately lighter either. It's just that something happens to where it's just a little bit more okay, like maybe you can make peace with it in a sense, or come to.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that, because I think, for me, if you just look at Jupiter in Pisces, clean cut, just Jupiter in Pisces, it has a lot to do with what to believe in. Right? What is truth? What is truth? Truth in both pertaining only to you as an individual. What do you believe in? I mean, for instance, people who have a Jupiter in Pisces or a Jupiter Neptune conjunction, or a square or an opposition, normally have a lot of faith in something. It's like, yes, that's, intuition is just like, wow, dude, we're going to be more sensitive and more intuitive in this period. And then we're like having these intuitive glimpses of something that is more abstract, which is the intuition. It comes like super quick, and it's abstracts, like, oh, you have to listen to get it, but it can also take the form of a vision. So people, for instance, like us, who believe in astrology and use astrology every day, and people who have that in their charts normally go through in like this kind of like, is this an illusion? Is this real? Is it like you question your belief, because the path in Pisces is from illusion to truth.
I have I have Jupiter trine Neptune in my chart, so I feel that I definitely feel that it does have a very visionary energy. It has that the intuition can just be right on, and very inspiring in a way too, because I have it in fire signs, but like you said, like, am I looking at something that could be truth? Am I faithful in something that has a reason to warrant my faith? And sometimes that's that could be the crux that comes with it.
Yeah. Because surrender is part of Pisces. You surrender to, what do you surrender to? Like a crazy guru, or to somebody who's holding the truth?
Yeah.
right? So we always have to question our devotion in a way. What do you get devoted to? Because when you devote time, energy, you invest all your resources into something that you're devoted to, sooner or later you come to this realization that you have to question whether or not it is based on truth or on illusion. Same with love, same with relationships, same with, you know, any type of belief system, anywhere, you know. So the Papa in the sky, Jupiter, is just telling us, you know, we got to have faith, right? And that's the beauty of Jupiter, is like, you got to have faith. You got to keep the light shining, even at the darkest hour, right? But what do you believe in, right? Is that bringing you faith, or is it dragging you down? Is it making you stronger? It's like a relationship. If a relationship makes you stronger, stay. If it makes you weaker, question. There, you know, you have to ask some questions.
There's some questions.
You have to question the energy between you and that other person. What's not truth in it? What's based on illusion? What's the ideals that are not working anymore? Right?
Yeah.
So we're really going to go through, you know, got to look a little bit at our ideals, what we believe in. You know, do we have faith? Maybe a lot of people will feel that shadowy aspect of Jupiter in Pisces. You know,
and it brings up an interesting point in relation to thinking of these signs as collective signs, and how Jupiter, when it gets to the point where it moves through Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and then Pisces, it goes through more of this collective world energy, and how it starts off with a Jupiter component, gets a double Saturn, and then comes back to Jupiter. And it's, you know, because we all are questioning what we have faith in as you know, as a society, as humans, you know, what we believe in. Are our beliefs aligned? They've always been different, but when we come up against something collectively, how do we, you know, twist that so that we are advanced? Because ultimately we are advancing together. Like the Jupiterian aspect becomes an advancement that is beyond the individual. It obviously always has the individual component, because the individual makes up the collective, but the overall arching of, think of the wisdom extracted, or the lessons that could come through it, and the advancement is more of that collective space. So it's interesting just to think about, like, and even maybe track those kind of 4-year cycles where it goes, and what does humanity and, you know, go through and learn and gain each time that 4-year cycle kind of comes around.
Well, I'm sorry, I wanted to find a little, because I did a little, like, okay, so, you know, I used to live with a guy who had Jupiter in Pisces for 8 years, and I really got to see his intuition at work. He had like the most magnificent intuition. He's like, he could sit, like, it was like you could almost see his higher mind going to some sort of theater. He's like he's like observing thoughts and channeling something, right? Pisces is about channeling something. So it's not surprising that it's present in the charts of extremely, you know, important figures like Kepler. He had Jupiter in Pisces. Darwin had Jupiter in Pisces. Freud had Jupiter in Pisces. It's not like tiny little people who had nothing, you know, they sort of did that to human evolution and world history. They changed a lot around the way we're thinking and the way we are understanding things. So that's how the scientific mind of Jupiter in Pisces can work. It's really interesting, because you can fuse that intuition into a rational field, like with the scientist, you know, observing data.
Yeah,
really,
and it's
having wide perspective like Darwin did.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about too, how those characters, it's not only changing the way we think, it's adding to how we think, because they're introducing something to us that is expanding upon what we already know, which is essentially one of Jupiter's roles there. It's adding to the pot. It's bringing us something new. And people can have a difficult time with that sometimes, because it's like, oh, what is this new business? Like, what am I having to integrate? You know, the sun, the sun moves around the earth, right? You know, like these types of things where it's like,
Yeah. Well,
now we're introducing.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, with Darwin as well, you know, it took a lot of time before they accepted his theories. It wasn't like something that he just introduced and then the world mind accepted it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You know,
makes so much sense. Yeah.
So let's see if I had another one. Yeah, Florence Nightingale as well had Jupiter in Pisces, and I think that was also interesting. She was like this number one nurse on Earth. Like the you know, there you see the generosity and the
compassion,
the compassion of Jupiter. Yeah. She's like, I mean, she stands for every human being on Earth today who knows a little bit of history, and you don't have to know a lot of history before you run into her name. And she stands like this, almost like this saint, you know, Saint Florence. You know, for me, that's always like a saintly energy. So maybe we're getting in touch with some saintly energies and some divine energies. And, you know, a lot of the dreamers and the visionaries around the world will have magnificent time with this one. Maybe see things more, maybe understand more of our interconnectedness between the higher and the earthly realms. Hopefully, you know, that's what I hope.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me as a dreamer, as an avid dreamer. I'm looking forward to it when it comes to just connecting with, you know, just having greater access to that space and having greater access for everyone, because, you know, some people have like the examples that you put forth. Some people have that just innately with them, and it's just something that they can tap into. But having it as a collective transit that we all are going to experience, we all have the ability in some way, shape, or form to tap into that. But
we're going to be more sensitive for sure.
Yes,
that's what I think. It's like it's really increasing our sensitivity. And you know, a mind like, for instance, Tolkien, he also had Jupiter in Pisces. You know, just that sensitivity on its own, how he could pull down the archetypes and create a whole new mythology with his work and stuff like that. You know, it's fascinating, but you have to have a certain kind of mind for metaphors and symbolism, and, you know, being able to kind of travel in those dimensions. So I think people who really spent a lot of work developing their psychic skills, they're going to, you know, evolve a lot this year.
Blast off into the Pisces realm. With
I can see now.
I get it. I have transcended. I am enlightened. But you know, but we will just be just that much more. You know, there is not. There is. I feel like Jupiter doesn't have a cap, right? That's like the whole purpose of it. Is it doesn't have a limit when it's doing its own thing. And so well, and that's something to, that's
another point with Jupiter. It's like, hey, your booze intake, maybe you should calm down a little bit, you know, because that's the other side of like, I have no limits, you know. So a lot of people will probably find their credit account go, you know, money, oh, dear Lord, you have to balance your budget and whatnot. Especially looking at the chart you pulled up now, you have a Jupiter square the nodal axis as well.
Yes.
That's super interesting. You know, I think it pertains a little bit to this insecurity around traveling for the time being.
Yes. And and just the literal delays and cancellations and you know, like it's not even just the insecurity around it. It's like not even being able to, because there's been so many flights that have been canceled for around the holidays. I mean, Venus, Pluto, Mercury's not helping that out. But even when I think here, we have there's been immense snow in Northern California and in Nevada and all on the West Coast. And it's more snow than it's been in the last 50 years. People can't travel, like you're literally grounded in a sense. And what I find interesting about the whole Jupiter squaring the nodes, and I don't know, Sol, do you tend to look at the true node or the mean node? Which is your go-to?
I'm looking at the mean nodes. No, true nodes. I'm sorry, true nodes. Yeah, always true nodes.
Yeah. And
I like the wobbling.
You like, and so but it's such an interesting placement, especially if you like to do astrological research right now, because with the mean nodes, they've already moved into Taurus and Scorpio. So the Jupiter square to the nodes is happening in the fixed signs at the end of fixed signs by mean calculation, and by true calculation will happen at the, beginning of the mutable signs. And, I have to say, getting jammed up in a fixed T square with the means, it was very apropos, but I'm curious what around January 3rd, when Jupiter makes its square to the true nodes, how that will manifest. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or observations, or just Jupiter squaring the nodes in general, but I found it interesting.
Yeah, when being an evolutionary astrologer, we are very fixed in on the nodes, and there are some different theories about especially planets squaring the nodal axis. If you go by the JV Green method, it's a principle that's not been properly addressed in previous lifetimes. So it's kind of like lingering. It's a skipped step, they call it. It's like that's something that you haven't dealt with properly. So it brings in a lot of evolutionary tension to that planetary principle. So you really got to work on it, right? So you can say that, let's say you have a person born with this, that person might have to deal with a little bit of self-discipline issues when it comes to excess. It could be extremely restless and freedom loving and not knowing when to stop. Jupiter has that, I don't know where the brakes are problem. It's like, I want to eat that cake and I'll top it off with that one over there. So you have obesity and you have all kinds of conditions pertaining to lack of boundary and lack of self-discipline with this one. So if we look at it collectively, right? This can be a time where people go a little crazy, with their, I would just suggest or advise people to stay a little bit off the internet. People have opinions. We're going to see them coming through. Yeah. And you might also have some sort of prophetic, somebody coming with some prophecies or wait, this is what I think is going to happen in the future. And, you can have, there's a slight madness in it, I think, because it's accentuating the excess of it. It's like it's so excessive. And it doesn't get any help from Saturn, Uranus.
I know. That's the question at that point. It's like you want Saturn back, you're like, I never thought I'd want Saturn back, Saturn. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe not so bad.
Well, I have Saturn on the South Node and Sun Jupiter conjunction. Thank you, Saturn on the South Node, for for the upbringing, for the structure, for the containment. There's good and bad with that one too. Saturn can be extremely suppressive, right? So that is something you have to deal with when you have a very strong energy. Sometimes people can come in and suppress you or shame you or whatever, those things. But when it works well, it sort of gets me up in bed, structure, routine, manifestation, form. With Jupiter, it's very easy. It's like blah, 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 and then nothing happens. Yeah. So it can have a big mouth problem. Right? What they say, you sell the fur before before you slay the animal. That's the thing we say very often in Norway. It's a kind of thing.
I think about you write a check your butt can't cash. For another I feel like that's a Southern one. But it's like over delivering, or promising to over deliver before you've even secured what's necessary to fulfill what you have. Well,
Saturn is Saturn is action speaks louder than words kind of principle, right? Yeah. Show me
the results. So when I see it, I'll see it when I believe, or I'll believe it when I see it type of thing.
And right now, Saturn is just, it's like the structures of Saturn. It's for me, the image that comes is this brick wall that is where the cement that keeps the brick together is about to kind of like disintegrate. So the wall is not so, it's like something is coming down that previously was out. You see what happens in society as well. We're changing rules all the time, and it's not the structures that we were used to. We're having new structures, new laws, new things we have to take into consideration. So the old one is kind of withering a little bit, and that's why I think, you know, right now it's hard for us to restrain Jupiter when it comes into Pisces. So from a mental health perspective, you know, don't go too far in your speculations. Don't question your intuition a little bit. You know, is it a projection of your subconscious fear, right? Are we projecting fear onto life? Or is it a pure, you know, gift from the gods or the angels or whatever, you know, realm you're surfing? Yeah. So yeah. It's like, I recently read, and I think it was probably like a prep for Jupiter in Pisces. It was Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. Mm-hmm. And he's inspired by William Blake. And William Blake talked about the doors of perception, the need for them to be clean. That's the word here. You gotta clean your mind. You gotta clean your perception. If you project your own, this happens a lot in Sagittarius. If you project your own opinions onto something or your belief system onto something, you might not perceive the truth. You might kind of like shoehorn it into your version of truth, the preferred truth. But with Jupiter in Pisces, this is naked, raw, but naked truth. It's unquestionable. It's from nature itself. It is what it is. So if we can find an acceptance for, well, it is what it is, you know, right now it is like this. We can flow through this without using too much energy being scared.
I like the word flow that comes through this, because I mean, we're talking about mutable water here. If there's going to be some sort of cascading flow, it seems very Jupiter and Pisces. And it makes me, so what do you think, Sol, about just the water component? I know we've talked about intuition and but you know, we think about water being emotional content, even like grief, things coming up with what we've collectively experienced there. And so any thoughts on water?
Yeah, definitely. If you consider, you know, there's different forms of water, you know, the water in your body, you know, the water of your emotions, and then the collective water where we are all being held. Jung had a thing for that, you know, collective emotion. And you can see a lot of collective emotion in Pisces. It's like, it's interesting, and that you know, that opens up there's a whole field of entanglement and whatnot there, you know, like telepathy and stuff like that. So for the mystic, this is, you know, it's a journey of mysticism that we can potentially look at right now. It's an inward journey. It's a yin sign, Pisces, so it's going inwards and upwards to see and find meaning. And the collective emotional field is what is Pisces. So that's the water of Pisces. And I think a lot of people will see and understand the amount of influence the surrounding have on our way of seeing things and perceiving things. You know, if we want to clean the doors of a perception, we have to be so conscious of what we are being given and fed constantly, and what we also feel constantly. Like the collective feeling will be increased or accentuated or expanded upon. It's like, I feel, oh, did you feel that? It was like something we all felt. Like yesterday, I had numerous people saying, yesterday was crazy. It was cray. You know, like, and I'm like, dude, I totally agree. There was something cheap with that day. Something in the energy of the collective was off. And that would be a psychic way of seeing the world, reading these collective fields, right? So I think it's going to remind us that we are all in this together and that we influence each other a lot more than we think.
Yeah.
A lot more. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, because Jupiter is known for just bringing us abundance, right? It brings us more of something. And coming out of the Aquarius transit, when we think about how much mental energy and you're talking about what it is, and projecting what on other people, and getting to a space of, air being an outward manifesting energy, and it being a detached one, where a lot of times with air energy, it detaches us from the body and the sense, or like the senses of like being in it.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about the rush of Jupiter going into Pisces in that receptive intaking form that then takes us from where we were growing from mental well-being to emotional well-being, and maybe having that like you said, that internal process that's going to come up, that is going to take us to a totally different space. Air they have these qualities of both being moist in some way, but the detached of air water is not detached. Water it gets in all the pores. It wraps itself around everything it touches, so.
What I saw when you were speaking now, I got the most beautiful image that we hug each other, like people hugging, like they were just showing compassion to each other, right? Just compassion. You don't have to hug physically. You can hug energetically. You can hug with your heart. You can hug people. Everybody's struggling these days. Everybody's scared. We just gotta remind ourselves we are living in a global village. I mean, basically, and we all basically want the same things. We all need the same things. We have primary needs, and it's pretty much the same for every human being. So I think a little bit of extending a little bit of compassion, I'm sure Jupiter will help us doing that, instead of this, this kind of like, we disagree. So what? You disagree. It's your brother.
Yeah. It's your brother. It's your friend.
Lover. It's your father. It's your mother.
Exactly.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Stop the hating.
The distance, I feel like hopefully Jupiter moving out of that space, the distance will start to shrink, because you'll realize in order to either move forward or just to feel good about life and to feel, happy about yourself, where you're headed, the people you're around, like it's going to promote some sort of closeness. And I mean, that's the whole thing with this pandemic, is like that we've been under since it started. It's like, don't get near each other. Don't hug. Don't keep it 6 feet. And, and there was reasons for that, of course, but I think having that Jupiter move into Pisces, it could be overwhelming, because Pisces does have a sense of overwhelm that could come with it, that, you overwhelmingly need some sort of touch or some sort of like emotional connection with that. Or when it does happen, it can be an overwhelming feeling, because you realize how much you might have missed that, or in that lack of connection, because Pisces is like one of the most connective energies that is out there. That's what it does, is it wants to connect in any way, shape, or form. And when it doesn't have connection, that's when it strays into streams that can be unfortunate for it, like addiction and things because we all just want to connect. And we're trying to do that. And obviously substances is not the best way to go about that, but just how can we foster and grow with connection with each other, especially after a very trying time collectively.
Yeah. When you see, for instance, Aquarius strong in a chart, let's say you have the moon in Aquarius, for instance, or you see a person who sporting a really strong Aquarius signature, you might have that isolation detachment problem. We've been isolating for so long with Jupiter in Aquarius.
Yeah.
So, but I think also there's like this coldness that came in, this coldness, this cold energy. And now I think with Jupiter going into Pisces, it feels much more feminine and warm and sharing caring in a way. So I think we're going to heal a lot of the wounds that came in the, aftermath of this pandemic. We were wounded in more than one way. There's been people sitting alone for way too long out there, scared of going out their doors. People who, it's just, we have had an increased loneliness on planet Earth the last year, right? And I think now with Jupiter now coming in a sign where we might have a little bit more faith that, all right, it's safer, or I can do this, or like, this is okay now, I can expand a little bit, I'm feeling more connected to the gods in a way. I can go out into the world with greater faith, so I can dare do things again. And that will heal the wounds of fear that comes from, fear of traveling, for instance. I had this thing going up. I really wanted some sun, and I would want to go to Mexico to get just with my kids and just have a little, R&R and just sun. I just need just something easy, nothing complicated, nothing. So while I've been planning this in my head, lots of thoughts about, if I travel, can I get back? What type of trouble can I get into when I travel? We don't want to be stuck in a foreign country away from our cats. We have to get back home again. So that was the first, I had a vision. I was supposed to do this, to go there. And then
all the complications, potential complications, potential Saturn.
Yeah. So it's encouraging us to take a risk, a leap of faith, this Jupiter in Pisces. But when it's square the nodal axis, just make sure that you're not being naive about it.
Well,
basically.
That is another Pisces attribute that can come in for sure.
And sometimes you also see Jupiter very activated in death charts.
Yeah.
And what we see with COVID now is that we understand now that people live longer. We have a problem with, when it comes to taking care of our elders in our society. A lot of people in my country, for instance, are waiting to get into a facility where they can get help. There's not enough room for them, right? And we're coming to, that's science helped us to live longer in a way, right? Yeah. So that's also one part of this COVID thing that made me think a lot about death. What are our, what is our relationship to death? Of course, we don't like letting anyone we love go. Nobody does. But that's also something that sometimes Jupiter says, we have to let go of this person, and we have to let go of this idea. We have to let go of this ideal, because it's going to be much better for you after you do that. Yeah. Right? You get this promise of growth when you let go of something.
True. That is true.
Growth can only come when you let go of that which prevents the growth. And that requires faith.
And that the leap of faith. Yeah. It's such an interesting there's so many directions I could go with that, because obviously when you even bring up the idea of how just people that need care, because you brought up an example with the elderly that need a situation, especially as we are slowly approaching we're kind of almost there, like with the boomer population basically going, we're going to have a very large elderly population that will need care. We think about care with the hospitals and the systems and what is, that's the thing when a tragedy strikes and pandemic, like we have to do this to keep the people out of the hospitals. But at the same time, it's also like, okay, well, where's that system broken? A system of care. And how do we advance that? Because that's, once again, Jupiter is like, well, maybe this is not working, and you have to let go of this strategy or this style, and we have to re-envision what care looks like for a collective society on many different levels. And
that is
you know,
so interesting. That just gave me so much. You know, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had these four freedoms, he was born with, what was it, Jupiter in Pisces or Jupiter Neptune conjunction. I'm a little uncertain which one it was. Anyhow, he wrote these four freedoms, you know, freedom of this, freedom of need, freedom of want, freedom of speech, freedom of belief, I think it is. And Florence Nightingale also being, you know, like the number one nurse on Earth. So what was it, Jupiter? Yeah, he has Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Taurus. That's what it is.
Yeah. And near Chiron too. It's all, they're all together, which is interesting.
And it squares his sun. He's a sun square Neptune Jupiter kind of guy. And he was the guy who led the United States through the Second World War. So he had intense leader potential. You know, this is like a visionary leader. His ideals were high, you know?
Yeah.
He had high ideals. They still influence us to this day. And I think as well, like, think about what you said there with the medical industry and, you know, who will emerge into our public, you know, sphere with Jupiter in Pisces. Probably some nurse who comes in and brings in like a Florence Nightingale type of person who says, we got to do something with this medical system we have, you know, we got to give, you know, this is, you know, we might get these visionaries coming out soon and just showing what they know. Right? The ideals of our society, what they're based on. And for instance, I felt, you know, very strong sympathy since I know a lot of people from the United States. I can't imagine what stressful things you had gone through with having to have insurance to get into the hospital. And what if you get ill and then you go bankrupt at the same time because you couldn't afford because of COVID? I mean, I can't imagine why the tension is so strong right now.
Yeah.
You know, why we are so tense. It's like, don't you know what you're doing? You know, like aggression comes up to the surface because people are scared. And when people are scared, they get angry. So now we need some compassion also from our leaders. We need them to go in, like in Norway as well, even though we have free Medicare, right? They've been constantly cutting from the budgets. You know, so even though we have fabulous hospitals, modernized and everything, and we get help when we are sick, at the same time, during this pandemic, they haven't increased their intensive capacity for taking in people coming in quickly during these 2 years of the pandemic. They just left the number of beds the way it was, even cut back on some beds. And that's not what you do in a pandemic. Doesn't show up as compassion, if you ask me. It really reveals that underneath everything, there's politics, there's money.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day. And you bring up a really interesting point to me because it makes me think of, once again, with Jupiter advancing and the idea of abundance is, do we then make policies that go forth that add to that? Because one of the things that Jupiter is going to do while in Pisces is going to make a sextile to Uranus, and it's also going to make a sextile to Pluto. The Uranus sextile is on February 18th, and then the Pluto sextile will be May 3rd, right before it leaves. But, you know, this is like that water care component coming in with an actual earth component, and being able to maybe upgrade the system to recognize what's broken there, or how we can change it, not in the favor of you know, cutting or limits or the power hungry or squeezing blood from a turnip or whatever, you know, like, and being like, no, we want to give more because as a society, we want to care for each other and live comfortably in some way. And this could be my pie in the sky, you know, I'm talking, but
no. If I was Franklin, you know, what would I talk about? True. Yeah. If you were Franklin, what would you tell the people, right? What would be a visionary's message to the world right now? He said, freedom from want, freedom from need. Like, he knew that if people aren't happy, my world is weak.
What you just saying that, Sol, made me think freedom from suffering.
Yes.
Because that is very Jupiter in Pisces to some extent.
So we need governments and leaders who are willing to invest in money that keeps people safe, free medical help. But it's also more than that, because Pisces deals with natural resources. I don't know if you assign it to oil, for instance, but we all need energy to survive. And the big wars in the future, you know, the big fights we're going to have is about the natural resources. Every human being needs a, you know, space to live. It needs to be properly warm there, you know, or, you know, we need energy. And then we need help, you know, medical help to like a minimum degree, right? And then we have to take responsibility ourselves, of course. You know, we cannot just outsource that to mama government. We have to grow up and take responsibility within that system ourselves. But there is something with the natural resources and the basic primary needs of humanity that I think will come under, you know, under like a stronger focus when Jupiter sextiles Uranus and Taurus, because Taurus deals a lot with the resources of Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think of, it's an interesting, I want to use the word aftermath, or maybe I want to use the word solution, because we just went through, you know, 2021, where it's all Saturn, Uranus, the tension of Saturn, Uranus. Of course, that's going to be playing out in 2022, but not with exact aspects. And here Jupiter's coming around. Okay, well, what is the solution to that? How do we grow from that? Like, we've just been through this, the earth has shaken, we've done this. Well, where do we go from here? What policies do we make? How do we band together to make this, you know, I think when I think of Pisces, I think of Jupiter both. I think of utopia. I think of ideals, and, you know, like what like ideally, what would our hearts and our souls want in this world? And it just, I feel like there's some sort of solution of some sort coming.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot of visionaries coming in and voicing their visions, you know. But I was just, when you were talking, I was like, oh, dude, Saturn's going to square the nodal axis.
That's right. That's right.
And that's the South Node in Scorpio. I'm like, oh no, we got to deal with this abusive thing once and for all.
Yeah.
The abuse. There's an abusive component on Earth. I mean,
that's true.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Way we use our sexuality. Do we abuse it? Do we use it? You know, like the way we use our money, the way we use our power, the way we've been used by the powers, you know, there's all this coming in too. And I see some good signs now. I just saw Elon Musk tweeted that he would pay his $11 billion in tax. I'm like, yeah. So like, and Elizabeth Warren has been going out, you know, fighting for this, and also Bernie Sanders, you know, working, Robert Reich. All these people have been, you know, standing on the barricades for quite a while now to create a more just system. So I think, you know, when we enter into this Jupiter, you know, bringing in the vision, and then Saturn squaring the nodal axis, revealing what's the real problem here. We're going to have like this. What's the underlying thing? We want to know. And coincidentally or not, Pluto is back on the United States Pluto as well. So you have your first Pluto return. And even though I live in Norway, we are part of the old Roman Empire in a way. So we're in, you know, it's a similar culture. You know, we live in this little part of the world, and we're still a little, me in it. Right? So we tend to forget a lot of the others in that me. It's us. We're the ruling super nations, you know? So this me attitude, yeah. Well, we know now that, you know, they don't get vaccines in the third world countries, for instance, and it's politics that's behind it. if you had compassion and altruism, come on, cough up. Let's just do it. Want to get rid of this thing? You should send vaccine south, right?
Which is so interesting because we're talking about all this Jupiter and Pisces energy within basically a concentrated 5-month time span. Because
that's interesting.
Because it's like rapid speed through Pisces until May 10th when it goes into Aries, and then it's going to come back at the end of October 28th through actually the solstice on December 20th of 2022 when it moves out of Pisces for good, which also made me think, Sol, like it does have this rapid like push through Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
But we're actually getting 3 tastes of Pisces, like
so
there's something about that too. Like, and what that means of like having Pisces energy kind of bookend Aquarius and Aries, and the starting energies that come through that and the independent quality that comes through Aries. And I don't know, it's just,
it's a very good point. It's because it's like, so we're dipping our toes into this, we're dipping our toes into that. Jupiter in Aries is just a new beginning. It's like a new chapter, like zing, now we're doing it. It's like we're moving forward. So I think, that's going to be a real positive influence when Jupiter gets into Aries, even though he can be quarrelsome and very convinced when he's in Aries. At the same time, there's no time for discussion, so we're just going to do it. So we just do it. And that's Jupiter in Aries. Yeah, come on, just do it. Don't nothing, just do it. So it can give us a lot of courage and strength and guts.
And it's the new beginning, I think, that we're all like waiting for. And so that's another interesting component with this Jupiter in Pisces and this concentrated, 5+ month energy of it. And it's like, what needs to wrap up? What do we need to, make a care package of? What do we have to let go of, like you were saying earlier, in order to advance and move into the stage that is to come? And so it's timely. It's it's purposeful, and it's setting us up for the thing that we're all trying to get to. It's like, when do we have the beginning? When does this end? People, when does it end? Well,
well, you gotta be a little patient, we still have that Saturn in Aquarius. Exactly. And George Orwell, he was born with Saturn in Aquarius, and I never get tired of talking about that, because George Orwell wrote this famous book called 1984. And a lot of people has been, like deep into this. I see it mentioned here and there, and like it's and there we go, 8 degrees Capricorn, Aquarius, and also Saturn. Jupiter. He's also Jupiter in Pisces, so he's got the combination of what we are now looking at. You should just have you read the book?
I know the premise. I got the Cliff's notes.
I read the short version.
I scrolled through on my feed. I got it real quick.
Yes, got it. Now he also wrote another book called Animal Farm.
Yeah, I read that. I read Animal Farm.
And that's a cool one. Yeah, it's like some animals are more equal than other animals. Like that kind of vibe to it. So he cared a lot for freedom, and he during his time working for, I think it was the British Navy or something, he got severely disillusioned. It's like, what? Huh? That kind of thing. And I think it also inspired some of his writing when it came to 1984, how we micromanage each other. And it's like, Big Brother sees you, and the surveillance that we're now, everybody's under because of these.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have that discussion happening. We've had a lot of it happening with Facebook the last year. Oh, Facebook, what did you now do? And then coming out and like, we didn't do anything. Are you sure? I say no. And that's a little bit like Saturn in Aquarius, but it's also, all these restrictions and rules and, corona passes and whatnot, all the time, this kind of like, we are now living under much harsher rules than we're used to. Some of our freedoms have been taken away from us. And that's really dawning on us right now. And some of it, like George Orwell, he was disillusioned. That's also part of Pisces archetype, to have, there's nothing worse than being disillusioned. But I thought this was true love. I thought this was like this and that, you had an expectation of something. And then you realize that's not what it was. So this could be like a pretty intense crash with reality to many degrees if you cling on to fantasies or wishful thinking, or have, a tendency to go crazy with your expectations.
Yes, that's
what comes. Jupiter is like, what comes up must come down.
Yep, the disappointment of expectation. That's always a fun one.
It can be a little bipolar or excessive, like that. The Saturn Jupiter aspect in itself is a little bit bipolar, because then you have a manic episode, like where everything is ecstatic and I can do anything. I can climb Mount Everest, and then you wake up and you smell the coffee the day after with Saturn. Yeah. So that's, I think it just requires a lot of consciousness on our end. Oh, that's a beautiful one. The new moon there.
Yeah. So it makes me think, because this is one of the highlights, I think, of Jupiter in Pisces is, where did it go? It disappeared. Is that new moon at 12 degrees of Pisces, right there with Jupiter on March 2nd. And one of the things that comes to mind, Sol, that I don't think we've actually addressed is, and when we were talking about things like going through just this, just so many emotions and the grief of the pandemic and going through loss and all that. And one of the things, as an artist and a musician, is one of the things that's a driving force to creativity are things such as loss or discontent or disappointment or heartbreak or, just those types of things. And it makes me wonder what is in store creatively, artistically, musically, visually, film, just poetry, all these things. Yeah.
I thought of that because I knew both you and I share a deep love for music. And I knew that you've been thinking of that Jupiter like a pure inspiration thing. Transport me, Jupiter. I want to be inspired.
Yes.
So it's good. I think you're going to be super inspired. It's just going to inform you with, it can definitely give that kind of ease with going into inspiration. And I don't know, did you read Eric Meyer's Beatles book? He wrote an excellent, you should get it. It's definitely because he goes through all the albums of Beatles and he just adds the charts to it. And there was some ecstatic moment. Yeah, it's very interesting. Especially if you're into art. Yeah, it is very interesting. There was a lot of things I knew when I never knew about it. That's so wow. He's sort of going so deep into it. He also moves into these spheres of collective consciousness and stuff like that, and where we pick up information. So we talk a lot about that, these higher realms, the states of inspiration. Where are we when we are channeling? That's the creative flow. And I agree with you. I think for people who are mystics or musicians or painters or artists or healers or nurses or whatever, we're just going to get access to a lot of new healing energy in that regard.
It makes me think of like what I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but like what Keith Richards said is like every song in the universe has already been created. Like basically I'm like a radio that, has an antenna that picks up on it. And it's like that radio signal is going to get really tuned in to all the potential patterns and combinations and, you know, sequences of energies that can create the event or the visual or the sound, etc. And so if you, you know, like that, take a sabbatical, take time out, give yourself the space to
Yes.
foster creativity, because I think especially
Go to
around
Mexico.
March, yeah, go to Mexico, sit in the sun,
Yeah.
get in the water, right? Get
Yeah.
into the ocean, like float. Soul wants to be there right now. I'm sure it's all cold.
Oh,
It's very
dear
cold
Lord.
where you are right now.
It's dark. It's so dark. It's
Yeah. Yeah, you need that life-giving sun.
yeah. And it's cold, dark, and depressed. We just entered into a new quarter, like everything's restricted and closed down, and it's like a minor depression that's creeping across the nation. So
yeah. Which is, I mean, it is winter too. So there is something to be said about this. Just if there is a time for this, I guess. But I mean, many of us are just over it. So there is that as well. It's like, maybe if this was the first time around, it's like, okay, I can take advantage of this, you know, going within, but it's like, I can not, I can't, let me out. You know, let me free.
The thing is travel. I want to travel. I just got that urge now. I haven't had it for so long, but I bought myself a book for Christmas, 1Q84. It's a Japanese book. It's amazing. And it transported me to Japan. And I'm like, oh dear Lord, I'm traveling, you know. So I'm basically traveling by reading this book. And it's different than seeing a movie. Yeah. I had the same experience with Shantaram when I read that one. It's like, oh, suddenly I'm in India, New Delhi, and I heard cars and people. And, you know, that's also a way to access the Pisces realm by going into books and reading a little bit and, you know, having a more present connection with art, just instead of just seeing the movie, right?
Exactly, because I mean, to me, what that does is it feeds your personal imagination, because when we see a movie, we are seeing someone else's vision of something, but when you read a book, this is what you see. This is your own creative, you know, flourishing that is happening, and it's very personalized, and everybody is going to read a book and everybody's going to see it completely different. And that's the difference between the word and, you know, like a film and an adaptation of something. And so,
and I also think it's good concentration training for us moving into a very mutable, you know, and we're in a very hectic, tense state collectively. Just concentrate on the pages, don't pick this one up, don't pick it up, leave it far away. You know,
throw your phone in the ocean. No, just kidding.
Or I took up painting, like oil painting, and the connection I get with painting and the peace and the quietude and everything just calms down when I do it. It feels so good. So I think maybe Jupiter in Pisces is going to guide us into what feels good for us. This feels good. This is a good feeling. We have to ask our feelings more. Does this feel good? We just tend to just like, it's like watching a horror movie. Does it feel good? No, not particularly. It feels horrible. Why do you do it? Why do you do it? It's like, I talked to a friend the other day and he said, you know, when I was a kid, I saw these horror movies and it traumatized me for life.
I'm that kid. I saw vampire bats when I was like 5.
You're not the only one.
And it ruined me.
Yeah. He'd seen something called The Ring. It's a terrible movie that shouldn't be released on Earth. It's like it just scares people half to death. It's like me, I saw some Omen or whatever. I'm like, or Nightmare on Elm Street. That was my, it came in your dreams.
Yes. The one place you're safe. No, I mean, you should be safe when you're sleeping.
Oh, dear Lord. So all these kinds of things, you know, like what you inform your brain with and how you create an oasis and a garden and a retreat place inside of you, I think would be, you know, very much because it feels good. It makes you feel good. You know, it just feels healthy. Right now, we're being inspired to move towards health. What makes you feel strong and healthy and good? How do we get back to innocence after this?
That's a good question.
Yeah. COVID aims straight at the heart of humanity. And in your heart lies innocence and purity and believe in love. This can discourage us a lot, right? It's like, oh, I don't believe in anything anymore. Everything is screwed, right?
Yeah.
But how do we get back to innocence, to that point when you were, the heart carries memories when you were 5. When you were 5 and you saw something amazing in nature, and you just go, oh, wow, like this.
Yeah.
Look at that tree. I want to climb it. That's innocence. It's joy. It's play. It's being in God's nature in a way. It's just being embedded by magic and mystery. And we need that so much. It's
we
so
do.
important. It's
Jupiter,
so healthy.
bring it. Yes. Bring it back. I love that though. The idea of it, utilizing your feelings to inform you of where you need to grow, where you need to move forward. Because I know Jupiter is always trying to move us forward. And forward can be painful, as you've brought up before, like if we have to leave something behind, etc. But just getting out of the overthinking that maybe Jupiter and Aquarius had, and getting into the heart connection. That's like, well, what is my heart saying? What does my body feel? What are my emotions telling me? Not to ignore them, like take them in, let them sit, maybe not be reactive to them right away. I mean, that's the beauty of water signs and in internal energies. It slows down. It doesn't have to move as rapid. So, give it a second, but honor what's coming in and honor what the heart has to say. And then just set your compass to what that trajectory is. And because we think about Pisces, and we think about, and Jupiter even too, and we think about dreams. What are you dreaming for? What are you hoping for? What are you wishing for? Are you aligned with it? Are you taking actions to it? Are you scared of it? Does it intimidate you? And I feel like there is like real, especially around this new moon in early March, and then going on to the Jupiter Neptune conjunction in April. We are all up against our dreams to some extent. Are you ready to move towards them? Or are they the same that they were before? Do you have new dreams?
Yes.
This is a question.
Yes. Great point. I so agree with you. This has been on my mind a lot lately. Maybe it's because the dip into Pisces made me kind of regroup a little bit when it came to my long-term goals in life. Not that I'm completely fixed in on it, but I really have taken a year out to see where my heart goes. And I've of course returned a lot to art. I can't help it.
You love what you love, right?
That's a very individual thing. What you love is just what you love. You can't question it. And you can't push it, you can't deny it. That's right. 2 things you can't do with love. And and it's also brought me to understand that life is so short, and meaning is so important. So how we spend our time, are we doing stuff that's meaningful? I mean, is that a luxury problem? Are we just being privileged? Like, we can have these philosophical questions in our minds and oh, dear Lord, I don't know, what should I take up today? Painting or writing? Never mind the bills. But we have to. But still, dreams and playing and all those things that comes from childhood, when you're free to just enjoy life, hobbies. It doesn't have to be an all-consuming career move. It can just be like you bringing in more meaningful activities in your own life because it's healthy. You might say Pisces also correlates to the immune system. It's your immune system. It has something. I call it the psychic immune system. It's where's the end of me and where's the beginning of you, and how do we get entangled into each other? Right? That would be a very Piscean sea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with this whole, since the world now is collectively having a flu, we are also being reminded that our immune system, we can do a lot for, and we should. We can't wait until it's too late. We have to prepare every day. I am responsible for my body. I'm responsible for my heart. I'm responsible for where I put my body and where I put my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So where do I want to put it? Somewhere that weakens me or somewhere that strengthens me? Because I came out of a music festival in 2019 when we saw Amazonas, it was burning. And the first thing that struck me is that, all right, humanity is getting fatigued.
Mm.
We are having a fatigue syndrome. It's too much of everything. Yeah. It's just too much. And then we were slammed with another set of fires in Australia, and it broke my heart. It broke people's hearts. It's like, where are we going? What's happening to us? So I have to be wise enough to take myself out of those situations that weakens me and stresses me, because my immune system will be low and available for invasion when I'm feeling either like I want to give up or quit, screw this, or I'm actually overworked, overstressed, worried too much of the time, and that's the condition people are being kept in, because they don't get enough money, they don't have enough pay, they don't know how to solve their own financial problems, because God forbid, society is not making it easy on you, because they're hoarding money from people through, for instance, medical, help. Or it's just like, we just had a big discussion about electricity in our country, because the prices were just like, and who earns money on that? Well, it's the government. Yeah, it's like an extra tax, and we already pay a lot of tax, you see. So it can make a lot of single mothers or people with low income or older people sit home and wonder what the hell to do. And it's putting stress on a society that is trying to heal its people. There is no holistic thought in that, This is what I wish the politicians could see. The way we run our society is not holistically healthy. We don't take into consideration what does it mean to have a healthy individual. Once they do that, that's when it can change. Then we don't need as many hospitals or whatever. You keep your village happy, you don't have any patients. It's a good motto from a Chinese, wise man.
The only problem is when all your profits is from the patients.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
And exactly. that's the systemic problem. And more of what Saturn and Aquarius has to work on too, you pointed out earlier, Saturn and Aquarius is not over yet, like Saturn moving through these signs is still a reality here. So there is that.
2023, and Pluto is finishing up these last degrees of the Constitution of the United States, which is a karmic piece of paper that has a lot of influence on the collective energy, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, so one thing we haven't really talked about, and which is one of the biggest things there, is the Jupiter Neptune conjunction.
Oh dear Lord, there's more.
I know, right? But when you were speaking there, it made me think, because the Jupiter Neptune conjunction, obviously it's roughly every 12 years or so there is, just because Jupiter rolls around, but having in Pisces, it only happens every 166 years. And so the last times we've had it was in 1856, which coincided with the spiritualist movement, but also coincided with movements from actually women stepping up actually in the spiritualist movement that were talking about rights for people that were underprivileged and underdogs of sorts. So there is this sort of energy that can come up with Jupiter and Pisces that kind of advocates for the downtrodden or people that don't have as much. And some of the things that you were talking about really came forward to me. So that was the last time. 1690, you know, pull it back, think about what happened then. 1524 for y'all that want to go way back and investigate a little bit more. But I mean, what do you think, Sol, about I know you had some maybe not just even about Pisces, but this conjunction as
yeah,
general.
yeah. Let me just go back. I think my screen will go off because I have Word open on another place here. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. It is a challenging conjunction. On the one hand, you can have like what's the guy's name? There's a Washington. He was born around 1956. His name was Booker T. Washington. Now, I have to admit, I don't know so much about him, but Booker T. Washington, he was born to slavery, and he kind of set himself free and became a leader for education and educational rights within the Black communities. So there you saw a guy who rose to charismatic leadership. That is part of the potential with this one. Like it's like almost papal, if you ask me. You know, John Paul II had it, not in Pisces though, but you know, he had the conjunction between these two. On the other hand, you have Sylvia Plath, for instance. She also had the Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, and she killed herself quite early because, you know, the madness, couldn't control.
Too much.
It's just too much. There's like, can't control the psychic realm, and you're being flooded by negative and fearful thoughts. So you can have every kind of, you know, from the whole spectrum there. Yeah, she has it in Virgo, so it's opposites.
And Jupiter's detriment there, so a little too much there, a little too real for her.
Like an overexpanded neurotic energy that came through, like hypersensitivity in a way. So the reason I brought in Plath was that, you know, she's a perfect example for someone who has an incredibly hypersensitivity to themselves. So people who are already struggling with hypersensitivity should definitely just be mindful of that when this particular conjunction happens. But on the other hand, you know, it's that visionary leadership, those you know, having that kind of, like Franklin D. Roosevelt, you know, visions for the future, vision given to the people, you know, that kind of inspiring hope then, right? So, you know, there's pros and cons with this one as well. You know, it depends on how you channel it, I guess. Right?
Well, and channel it you will. That's the
well, channel it you must.
Channel it you must. And so
we're going to see some interesting weather at that time, probably.
I think you're absolutely right about that. We're probably gonna have, I feel like we're gonna have a pretty wet spring. That is going to happen. We're already having a wet winter, it seems like, in many parts.
That's good for your part of, you know, California, right?
It is. It's a blessing and a curse to some extent, because it's like, you know, a little bit of rain consistently would be great. Big deluges of rain, you know, in spurts, create flooding, create mudslides,
I know.
Traffic issues.
Oh, dear
and
Lord,
so it's like, you know, you'll want it, but when you get it, it can be too much. I mean, that feels like Jupiter and Pisces.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
I said one portion.
you get the whole tail. You know, my eyes were bigger than my stomach. I can't consume it all.
Oh, dear Lord. And I think a lot of people is going to fall in love at that time. You know, it might open the heart quite abruptly. It's like,
or and that could be all types of love. That could be rekindling of love. That can be that could be reconciliation, when we talking about earlier
forgiveness.
Forgiveness, another great Pisces word. Where you talked about earlier about the rifts and the division between people, and people that are close by nature, familial, lovers, etc. And so is this an olive branch? Is this I'm willing to step into your shoes or see things from a different, I don't know, like have that compassion in the heart, or just it has a bonding, it has like a magnetic quality that comes together, because Pisces just wants to merge, it just wants to fuse. It doesn't know where you end and another begins, which can be a problem too when we talk about codependency, addiction, things along those lines. But if there's already been intense boundaries, this is that opening that could take place.
But I'm sorry, there's a but.
Give the but. There's always a but, Sol.
Yeah, always a but. It's like 22, 23, 22 degrees. The nodal axis is at 22 degrees, 53.
Exactly.
And it's like perfect square between Saturn in Aquarius.
It is.
I'm like, ooh, I don't want to go into that energy. But listen, and then you have Jupiter, Neptune going into 23 there as well. So definitely, if you have sensitive chart points around 23 degrees, 22 degrees, you're going to feel this one for sure.
Yes.
But, like on the one end of the spectrum, I get this feeling of a little bipolar energy. On the one end of the spectrum, you have this incredible vista to the sky and the higher consciousness with Jupiter and Neptune, and the love and the ecstasy and all the yummy that comes with it, the potentials. And then you have Saturn going, well, darling, here's your coffee, Listen, just checking in on reality.
Yeah. It makes me think of two scenarios. One, like the high scenario, it's like, okay, well, I'm in touch with my dream. I'm in touch with my vision. I realize it's going to take hard work, and I'm at a point where it's destined that I take on that responsibility. Or there can also be I don't want to look at the reality that's placed before me, so I'm going to live in this delusional world that suits my own beliefs and my own, opinions or emotions. And I'm going to stick with that and pretend that the hard things don't exist until they get so rock in a hard place that, you're not going to be able to see them. So it's like, we talk about that all the time in astrology. We talk about polarity and shadow and the different manifestations there. And so it's absolutely a reality. But, when it comes to the dream, when it comes to manifesting, you're always going to need Saturn. You're always going to need the plan. You're always going to have to stick with the, the steps, the endurance of it.
And integrity is your most important resource. What brings Earth forward at this point is that people take up their own inner leadership, and they take responsibility for their own lives in a much more conscious way, like almost going in and giving yourself a wow, yeah, like when you promise yourself something. I promise I will do my best. I promise to support you for thick and thin. I promise to do the right thing. That's what Saturn wants you to do.
Are we talking about vow? Or are we talking about a vow? I'm like, I like the wow. I'm gonna make a wow to myself because that sounds way.
Prefer that one. Yeah.
Prefer that one.
You thought about that for a long time before you got.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I got a wow from the vow.
No, but it's. I think I had a vision at the onset of COVID where I saw a group of people and they had this crown chakra that was opening. And I heard the words ladies and gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen for me is like a little bit up there, like it's more like
it's more elevated, a higher echelon, like ladies and gentlemen.
Virtues, you're virtuous. Yeah, it's like you have virtues in your life. And then I saw this, I got this input in my mind where I saw, okay, so when the crown chakra is open, you don't have to tell people what's right and wrong. They will correct their own behavior. They will say, I'm sorry, dude, if I hurt you. I'm sorry this, I'm sorry that. So this can be a time for saying sorry and to forgive each other.
Yeah, it's your own realization.
Yeah, and with Saturn coming in and saying, oh dear Lord, what did I do? What have I done? The consequences of my own actions. And then with a compassionate heart and you can only see the truth if you're compassionate. Otherwise you will go into judgmental form and you will hate yourself for being so and so. So consciousness without compassion is devastating. People drive themselves crazy with that. They start hating themselves. That's not a good way to heal. Yeah, we all know that. But if you have compassion, and then you can look into your own eyes and say, oh, dear Lord, did I do that? I did it. Oh, you can come out and you can say, I'm so sorry for not, I'm sorry, right? So I think that could be the beautiful expression of these two coming together.
I feel like there's going to be an uptick in Buddhist literature. It's going to be, it's like got to be on those top selling charts where we can talk about loving kindness and the discipline of loving kindness. I know. Hey, what do we got to lose? Nothing. I do love that though. Yeah. So now, if you just want to look back, if you want to jot down these years to connect with what Jupiter and Pisces means for you or your loved ones or your family history or what have you, the last time we had Jupiter and Pisces was 2010, 1998, 1986, 1974, 1962, 1950, 51, 1938, 39. It makes me think of Wizard of Oz came out then, 1927 and 1915, basically in the 20th century there. So if you want to do a little research or just reflect on your own periods, if you've experienced them or have lived long enough, I mean, obviously there's probably no listeners that have some 1915 on us, but you can think about historically what happened there and do a little research. Do you have anything that comes to mind, Sol, any of those years, or is it all?
I was thinking about 1927, for instance. That was a dark period in humanity. I think I will go back a little bit and study what happened in 1927. Actually, that got me curious. So that was the thing that sprung out, I think, the most. I'm born in 1974, but I'm born with Jupiter in Aquarius. It ingressed into Pisces a little later. Yeah. But then it squared Neptune, and it was also squaring the nodal axis by then. So 1974 is a good study year. There's a large chunk of people born in 1974 who would have that. Like, for instance, one of the guys that comes to mind is Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like, and now he is out with his new movie, Look Up. So Leonardo is also would probably be extremely interesting to just observe today. I know for a fact that our crown princess, Martha Louise, is engaged to this Californian shaman called Shaman Durek. Heard of him? They're both Jupiter Neptune individuals. Martha started this healing school for angels and channeling and sensitivity and stuff. So she's been quite different from a lot of other royals in that sense.
It sounds,
yeah. So it was a big uproar, and she was married to this very beautifully sensitive soul who was an author, and they had 3 kids. And then she's just been around so much, and she's been so important. We've been following her and her development for years, and people have been criticizing, she's gone mad. And I'm like, interesting, she's talking with angels and doing all this healing work. And, I'm not judging, I come from a scientific point of view. I'm an astrologer, so I can be a little skeptical to certain things from that part, like, oh yeah, you found a feather in your wallet and now there's an angel in your hood. So we all had a good laugh from that one, but that's the cynical attitude, right?
Hey, that's the rationale of air. That's the difference, and that's okay. They both have their place. That's the thing. We're always questioning what's real, right? We're always questioning what back again, what to have faith in, what we believe.
But this Shaman Durek is born in 1974. She's born in 1971 when there was an opposition between Jupiter and Neptune. That's also a date that can be interesting. Like dates to look at. I think it's 1971. Yes, it is. So that's when Jupiter and Neptune were in opposition from Sagittarius to Gemini. or
Wow.
conjunction. I can't remember. Was it a conjunction? I think it's a conjunction actually.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
it might have been. Sit
yeah,
somewhere in there. Somewhere in there.
Thing is, yeah, it would be a conjunction. Jupiter would be in Sagittarius as well, or in Scorpio. That's true. I remember now. Thing is, it's Saturn on the other end. Saturn is in Gemini in her chart, and that's the one opposing the Neptune thing. So she has that Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter opposition in her chart. And she's together with the shaman now, the shaman Durek, who has the square on his nodal axis. So these are very Jupiter Neptune kind of people, right? They're into channeling and healing, and never mind the scientific aspect of it, we'll go more into the devotional aspect of it. So yeah, but Saturn squaring the nodal axis is not gonna allow us to just toss our mind away. Yeah, this is so interesting. This is around her time, 15th of September. She's born around in September. She also had Mars on the North Node. That's a very interesting generation, that 71 generation, when they had Mars retrograde on the North Node. And then they have this Neptune. You can see Neptune, Jupiter at 0 degrees there, opposing Saturn in Gemini.
What makes me think of like this nodal position and in the Mars and this time period being caught in the Saturn Uranus square that's going on now too, and Uranus being at the bending of the nodes for people that were born around then. She fits into that.
Yeah, so some of these people might come into bigger focus. Leonardo DiCaprio as well, he's a 74. People with that conjunction, opposition, square in their own charts might just finally come out and be some sort of visionary, mystic, hope healer for Earth as Jupiter progress, or have that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. And I'm sure, he's already very politically engaged, Leonardo DiCaprio. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah,
we will. We will. There, and really, if you have Jupiter, if you're out there and you have Jupiter or Neptune in conjunction in your chart, I noticed that a lot with the Saturn Pluto conjunction, and even the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, how either people would rise to prominence that would have that aspect in their chart in the public eye, or just people that I knew in my own life or clients that were going through major life switches or changes or realizations or what have you, because that grand conjunction that they were born with was being activated once again in the skies. And so
exactly, transit by resonance doesn't have to happen directly.
Yeah, I like that. Transit by resonance. Yes. I can see when that has applied many times in my life.
Oh dear Lord, yeah. It's very, very active. These are the things that we don't get to know about when we just read about transits. It's just that when you have these correlating aspects forming in the sky, and it doesn't have to be in the same sign by the same degree or nothing, that energy is activated. So it activates your energy inside.
Yeah.
So.
Like every time Mars squares Saturn, I'm like, not again. Well, Sol, it's, so Jupiter and Pisces, if you had a few key words, like really, I always ask, I'm like, give one word. It's hard to give one word with Jupiter, so I'm not going to put that pressure on you, but any like key adjectives to take away from this transit?
Yeah. It's probably a little cheesy, but truth shall set you free. Not like that, but there is safety in truth. It's illusions that kills us, but when we know the truth, we are free, and that's making us feel safe. It's something that happens in your life when you find not the preferred truth, not the idealized truth, not the hopeful truths, but the truth. You can just lean back and you know that you can just trust the flow that goes through your life. One things lead to another, right? So you can just be in a more receptive mode when it comes to being on Earth in general. Not push it too hard, not struggle so much, just let it flow more.
Let it go, let it flow. And
Mhm.
it makes me think when you say that, it's like, because who knows the truth? The heart.
Mm.
That is always a central point. Like when
I
you,
mean,
if you're honest with yourself,
mhm.
if you're honest with yourself and you're tapped into
You
your heart
know,
space,
you
like even
know,
if you
you
don't want
know.
to know,
Oh, you don't
that's,
want it. A lot of the time, you want to eat what's unhealthy for you.
but you know
That's
better.
weird. Why do you want to do that? Like a stick or be stuck in toxic relationships, or but the truth would tell you then to not do that. Don't do that. Have faith. Get out of it. Stop. And you will feel so much better. Like your life is getting back on track again.
I
It's
also
not as
like,
easy as that, of course. I'm
of course,
simplifying,
I
but you
know.
know.
Yeah. If only it were. But I also love the idea of the flow, because sometimes people think in order to advance in life or to
Mm.
grow, you have to fight for something, or you have to, you have to stand up. But Pisces isn't about
It
that.
has to be hard.
Yeah, Pisces, like water and Pisces is like, it's almost like you get in where you intuitively feel you fit in, and then you coast. There's a
Mm.
coasting, and there's a dependency that comes with it too, because water needs others. It in order to
Yeah.
have the agenda move forward, there's going to be this dependency upon the
Mm.
people in our lives, and the people in the world that is part of that. So,
If I would just, like extract or make an essence out of it, I would say cooperate with life. It's
mm,
cooperation with life. So you listen to life. What is life requiring from you at this moment, this moment, this moment? And you're as honest as you can, but you cooperate with life and life cooperates back with you. That's flow.
that is flow.
Yeah, that means you go to the toilet when you have to go.
Don't hold it in. Don't,
And don't
don't make
push
it
it.
harder than it has to be.
And don't push it.
Yeah,
All
love
right.
yourself enough. Oh, I love it, Sol. If there's any way to end a talk on Jupiter and Pisces, it's, relieve
A
yourself
toilet
when
quote.
necessary. Oh, I love it. All right, Sol. Well, where can people find you? What do you got going on? You have anything upcoming you want to share?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a class on individuation, evolutionary astrology. We work on the individuating, we have consensus, individuating, spiritual levels of energy. It's like an understanding of the full spectrum of the archetypes. So I'm going to give a class on individuation. That's, individuation through the science. It's the 3rd of January.
Oh, perfect.
And
The
yeah,
square.
actually, yeah, I'm like,
Jupiter
yeah, dude,
square.
yeah. And the thing is that I thought with Saturn Uranus square going on so strong, I think a lot of us are going through this phase where we really have to go in and check with ourselves, like what, like find some authority on the inner side, and that would be individuating. Trust your own instinct, trust your own intuition, trust your own guidance in life. So it's a Uranian Uranus kind of vibe to it, when people really dare to just break free from something. So that's the class I'm giving, and it's online, it's on the web, and you can find the intel on that on my home page, which is solvit.com. And other than that, I'm to be found at Polaris Astrology on Instagram and on Facebook, both Polaris Astrology. So yeah, that's where you find me.
You're definitely going to want to check Sol out, because she always has it. I love your inspired writing, where you just come up with something, and I'm just like, because maybe it's the Aquarius, some of the Aquarius nature that you have, but it's a different take. It's just a different take, and it's a different way of looking at something. So
I get that a lot, actually. So that's cool.
Well,
I'm like, yes.
that is your gift, my friend. That is one of your gifts. All right. Well, you can find me over
Mm.
at energeticprinciples.com. And of course, I will share Soul's information there as well. And in the description where you listen to this podcast so that you can connect with her beyond this podcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Energetic Principles. Just a reminder, if you want to sign up for my monthly newsletter, The Heavenly Wind, you can do so in the description of this podcast or on my website as well. And I think I'll have January up here soon. So tune into that. And yeah, it's been a wild one. It's been a wild one, Sol. Maybe, finishing out 2021. It's been hell of a year.
Yeah. Hell of a year. Yeah, it's been strange and wild. But yeah, it's all changing and shifting all the time. And right now we're looking at some changes. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. So all right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in to us and listening to us gab about Jupiter and Pisces for this time period. Of course, it's going to be long. It's Jupiter, you gotta share it all.
Yeah, we had to exaggerate.
We had to exaggerate.
We just we had to.
Yes. So, and Pisces, Pisces likes to share. So, spread the word, spread the good Jupiter
Sharing
word.
is caring.
Yeah. Sharing is caring. So, all right. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope to see you again on this program. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Good luck. Happy Jupiter and Pisces. We'll see you out there. We'll see you in the new year. And as always, may the stars be with you.